Get back in line. First class isn't for everyone. The words cut through the air like a knife, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, precise enough to make heads turn. A routine business trip turns into a corporate battleground right at the boarding gate. When a condescending airline manager decides to make an example out of a black CEO, he has no idea he's chosen the one passenger who can shut down his entire airline with a single phone call. This isn't just a story about discrimination. It's a minute-by-minute account of how a multi-billion-dollar company was brought to its knees by one man's prejudice and one woman's refusal to be belittled. What happens when unchecked authority meets absolute power? Stay with us to witness the shocking confrontation, the immediate fallout, and the life-altering consequences that followed. A lesson that echoed from the departure lounge all the way to the boardroom. The air in the Monarch Air Prestige Lounge at Chicago O'Hare was a carefully curated symphony of calm. The clinking of porcelain on saucers, the hushed murmur of conversations about market caps and quarterly earnings, the distant, almost romantic roar of a Boeing 787 spooling up for its transatlantic journey. It was a world away from the frantic chaos of the main terminal. Dr. Amara Wilson sat in a plush leather armchair by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the ballet of ground crews on the tarmac below. She wasn't drinking the complimentary champagne or indulging in the artisanal cheese selection. Her focus was on the tablet resting on her lap, its screen filled with complex logistics schemas and financial projections for Nexus Global Logistics, the international supply chain powerhouse she had built from the ground up over 15 grueling years. Nexus wasn't just a company. It was her life's work, a testament to her belief that efficiency and humanity could coexist in the cutthroat world of international freight. Her flight to Frankfurt MA-104 was the final leg of a week-long whirlwind tour. The deal waiting for her in Germany was the culmination of 2 years of negotiations, a partnership that would make Nexus the exclusive logistics provider for the entire European Union sector of a massive tech conglomerate. It was a $4.8 billion deal, the kind that reshapes industries. She was dressed for the 8-hour flight in a tailored but comfortable cashmere hoodie in deep navy paired with designer jeans and immaculate white leather sneakers. It was a uniform of quiet luxury, a subtle signal to those in the know that she valued comfort and quality over ostentatious displays of wealth. Beside her rested a sleek, minimalist leather briefcase containing the hard copies of the final proposal. At 42, Amara Wilson possessed an aura of unshakable composure forged in countless boardrooms where she was the only woman, the only person of color, or both. Her gaze was direct, her questions precise, and she wasted neither time nor words. Her company's contract with Monarch Air was one of the largest corporate accounts on their books, valued at $28 million annually. Her global elite status. The airline's most exclusive invitation-only tier was a mere byproduct of the sheer volume of travel she and her executive team undertook. Amara's journey to this moment had been anything but easy. Born to middle-class parents in Baltimore, her mother a high school science teacher, her father an electrical engineer, she'd been taught from an early age that she would have to work twice as hard to be considered half as good. She graduated top of her class from Howard University, earned her PhD in logistics engineering from MIT, and spent 5 years climbing the ranks at a major shipping company before striking out on her own. The founding of Nexus came after a particularly brutal meeting where her innovative supply chain solution was dismissed out of hand, only to be praised when presented by a white male colleague weeks later. Instead of fighting for recognition within a broken structure, she decided to build something new. Starting with just 3 employees and a small office in Chicago, she now employed over 8,000 people across 43 countries. Amara checked her watch, a subtle Patek Philippe that had been a gift to herself when Nexus hit its first billion in annual revenue. 30 minutes until boarding. She returned to reviewing the final contract points, making small annotations with a stylus. The deal was solid, but there were always last-minute details to consider. Meanwhile, 2 floors below Victor Shepard, the station manager for Monarch Air at O'Hare, was having a truly terrible day. A baggage system failure that morning had created a domino effect of delays. A surprise FAA spot inspection had his team scrambling. And to top it all off, a memo had come down from corporate headquarters in Dallas, a blistering critique of declining profit margins on premium routes. The memo, authored by a new notoriously ruthless VP of operations, specifically called for station managers to crack down on status fraud, unauthorized upgrades, and lounge misuse, with the implicit threat that heads would roll if costs weren't contained. Victor, a man whose ambition had long outpaced his talent, read the memo as a personal directive. He saw it as his chance to be a hero, to show the new VP he was a company man, a tough enforcer who could protect the bottom line. At 47, he'd been passed over for promotion 3 times and was determined that this time would be different. He was a stickler for rules, not because he believed in fairness, but because rules were a shield for his own insecurities and a weapon to wield against those he deemed unworthy. In his mind, the image of a premium passenger was firmly set: a middle-aged white man in a slightly rumpled suit barking into a phone. Anyone who didn't fit that mold was to him an anomaly and a potential target for his newfound zeal. Victor had joined Monarch Air 12 years ago after a mediocre career at 2 smaller airlines. His resume was padded with exaggerations, his reference letters carefully cultivated from people who were just happy to see him leave. He'd managed to position himself as a cost-cutting expert and efficiency specialist, terms that often masked his true talent, making subordinates miserable enough to quit before they earned benefits. With thinning blonde hair meticulously arranged to conceal his receding hairline and a perpetual sheen of sweat on his upper lip, Victor compensated for his physical insecurities with aggressive posturing and unnecessarily loud instructions to staff. His Navy Monarch Air blazer was always buttoned too tight across his expanding midsection, the company pin on his lapel polished daily as if it were a military decoration. He left his cramped office and decided to show his face on the concourse, his eyes scanning for any infraction, any nail that needed to be hammered down. His gaze swept over the bustling crowds, the sea of faces, until it landed on the boarding area for MA 104 to Frankfurt. The priority line was already forming. It was his flagship flight, his responsibility, and he was determined to make sure everything and everyone was perfectly in its place. The boarding announcement for flight MA 104 echoed through the lounge, and Amara gracefully packed her tablet into her briefcase. She gathered her things and made her way to Gate K-12, the journey smooth and unremarkable, the final few steps of a 1,000-mile business trip. She saw the lines forming and joined the short queue for Group 1 boarding, nodding politely to the gate agent, a young woman named Lucia Hernandez, who was scanning passports with practiced efficiency. Lucia had been with Monarch Air for 4 years, working her way up from baggage services to the coveted position of international gate agent. She was known among frequent flyers for her warm smile and unflappable demeanor, even during the most chaotic of boarding procedures. Today, Lucia's dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her uniform crisp, despite it being the end of a long shift. She'd been watching the flight manifest with interest, noting several VIPs, including 2 senators, a famous violinist, and most notably Dr. Amara Wilson, whose global elite status was flagged with the highest priority code in the system. Lucia had read about Dr. Wilson in Hispanic Business Quarterly and had secretly hoped to catch a glimpse of the woman who had broken so many barriers in the logistics industry. The premium cabin passengers were now lining up their boarding passes and passports in hand. Lucia called for Group 1 to begin boarding, her voice pleasant but authoritative over the announcement system. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're now ready to begin boarding Monarch Air Flight 104 to Frankfurt. At this time, we invite our global elite members, first-class passengers, and those needing special assistance to board through Lane 1. Amara moved forward with the small group of premium passengers. A white couple in matching cashmere sweaters stood ahead of her, followed by an older Asian businessman speaking quietly into his phone in Japanese. Behind her, a white woman in her 50s with expensively highlighted hair was rummaging through a designer handbag, muttering about her reading glasses. When Amara reached the front, she handed over her passport and boarding pass with a small, professional smile. Lucia's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she recognized Dr. Wilson in person. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Wilson," Lucia said with a warm professionalism that acknowledged Amara's status without making a fuss. "It's an honor to have you flying with us today. You're all set for Seat 2A. Enjoy your flight to Frankfurt." Amara returned the smile. "Thank you, I appreciate it." She took 2 steps past the podium, her foot about to cross the threshold of the jet bridge when a sharp voice cut through the air. "Hold on a minute. Just one moment." Amara turned. Victor Shepard had stepped out from behind a pillar, his arms crossed, a look of suspicious scrutiny on his face. He wasn't looking at Lucia. His eyes were fixed solely on Amara. "Let me see that boarding pass again," he said, his tone leaving no room for debate. He didn't address her by name or title. Slightly surprised, Amara handed her pass back to Lucia, who looked nervously at her supervisor. Victor snatched it from the young woman's hand, his eyes narrowing as he studied it. He held it up to the light as if it were a suspected counterfeit bill. "Wilson, Amara," he muttered, then looked up at her, his gaze sweeping over her cashmere hoodie with undisguised skepticism. "This is a first-class ticket, Seat 2A. "Yes, I'm aware," Amara replied, her voice calm and level, betraying none of the irritation beginning to simmer beneath the surface. "Is there a problem?" "We've had a lot of issues recently with irregularities." Victor said, the word hanging in the air, thick with insinuation. "I just need to verify the legitimacy of this booking." The line behind Amara had stopped. People were starting to stare. A low murmur went through the crowd. Amara felt a familiar hot prickle of indignation, but she kept her composure. "Verify it? How? It was just scanned. Your system confirmed it's valid." "The system can be fooled," he retorted, his voice growing louder, playing to the audience he was creating. "This is an expensive seat. I need to see the credit card used to purchase the ticket." This was a highly unusual and demeaning request. She was a global elite member. Her identity had been verified multiple times. This wasn't protocol, it was a personal challenge. "That's not standard procedure," Amara stated, her voice losing its warmth and becoming clipped and precise. "My ticket was purchased through my company's corporate travel portal, as it always is. You have my passport. My name is on the manifest. The ticket is valid." Lucia tried to intervene, her voice low and professional. "Sir Dr. Wilson is one of our top-tier global elite members. Her account is secure. I can see the corporate booking code right here." Victor shot her a venomous look that silenced her instantly. "I am the station manager, and I am handling this. Stay out of it." He turned back to Amara. "Ma'am, if you can't produce the purchasing card, I can't let you board. We've had too many cases of fraud." Passengers waiting to board were now openly watching the confrontation. Several had pulled out phones. Among them was Taylor Morgan, a 34-year-old tech journalist on her way to cover the same conference in Frankfurt that was tangentially connected to Amara's business deal. Taylor had been live tweeting her travel experience all morning and immediately recognized the situation unfolding as something significant. She began recording discreetly, her journalistic instincts kicking in. "I've never been asked to produce a credit card after my boarding pass was already scanned and approved," Amara said, her voice still steady but with an edge of steel now. "This isn't about fraud prevention. This is about something else entirely." Victor's face flushed red. "I don't appreciate what you're implying. I'm just doing my job. If you want to board this flight, you'll comply with security protocols. Which protocol specifically requires a global elite member to produce a credit card after their boarding pass has been scanned and approved?" Amara asked. The question was precise, designed to expose that no such protocol existed. Victor didn't have an answer, so he escalated instead. "Step aside, please. You're holding up the line. If you want to sort this out, you can speak with customer service in the terminal. From the back of the boarding area, Michael Rodriguez, a senior operations officer for Monarch, noticed the commotion. At 42, Michael had been with the airline for nearly 2 decades, working his way up from baggage handler. He immediately recognized Dr. Wilson not just from her profile in the system, but from a logistics conference where she'd been the keynote speaker. He started making his way toward the gate, sensing trouble. "I'm not moving," Amara stated calmly. "I have a confirmed reservation, a valid ticket, and the right to board this flight. If there's a specific security concern, I'd like to know what it is." Victor's nostrils flared. He was being challenged publicly, and his fragile authority felt threatened. He reached for Amara's boarding pass again, and with theatrical deliberation tore it in half. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Someone muttered, "He can't do that," another voice said. "This is wrong. This boarding pass is now invalid." Victor announced loudly, "Security. We have a situation at Gate K-12. 2 security officers who had been monitoring a nearby checkpoint began moving toward the gate. Lucia looked horrified, her eyes darting between Victor and Amara. Amara stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Years of negotiating billion-dollar deals had taught her how to mask her emotions. Inside, she was calculating, assessing, making decisions that would reverberate through an entire industry. "You are making a significant error," she said quietly. Not a threat, but a simple statement of fact. "The only error was trying to use a ticket that wasn't yours." Victor replied, his voice thick with condescension. "First-class seats are for legitimate premium customers." The security officers arrived, both white men in their 30s, looking uncertainly between Victor and Amara. This woman was attempting to board with what I suspect is a fraudulent ticket, Victor told them. She's refusing to provide verification and won't step aside. The older security officer, whose badge read Daniels, approached more cautiously. "Ma'am, can you tell me what's happening here?" Before Amara could answer, Victor cut in. "I've explained the situation. Please escort her from the gate area." Officer Daniels looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I need to hear from her as well." Amara met the officer's gaze directly. "My name is Dr. Amara Wilson. I'm a global elite member with Monarch Air. My boarding pass was scanned and approved by the gate agent. Mr. Shepard here intervened, demanded to see my credit card, which is not standard procedure, and when I questioned this, he tore up my boarding pass." As she spoke, Michael Rodriguez finally reached the gate area. "Victor, what's going on?" he asked, his voice low but urgent. "Handling a security issue." "Michael, not your concern," Victor responded dismissively. "Dr. Wilson is one of our highest-tier members," Michael said, glancing apologetically at Amara. "There must be some misunderstanding." Victor's eyes narrowed at this betrayal from a colleague. "I'm the station manager here. This is my call." Amara took a breath, making a decision. She could force the issue, create a scene, demand her rights. But 20 years in business had taught her when to fight battles directly and when to execute a strategic withdrawal. "I'll leave," she said simply. "But I want everyone's names, and I want it noted that my valid boarding pass was destroyed without cause." Victor smiled thinly, victorious. "You can file a complaint with customer service." Amara turned to Lucia. "May I have a printout of my boarding information, please, for my records?" Lucia, looking deeply apologetic, quickly printed a new boarding document and handed it to Amara. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Wilson," she whispered. "It's not your fault," Amara replied quietly. Then she turned and walked away from the gate with perfect posture and unhurried steps, her briefcase in hand, leaving stunned silence in her wake. Taylor Morgan was still recording her phone, capturing everything. She immediately ended her video and started typing out a thread on Twitter, "Just witnessed shocking discrimination at Monarch Air Gate K-12 at O'Hare. Black woman with confirmed first-class ticket denied boarding after manager tore up her pass." Details follow. Hashtag Monarch Air disgrace. As Amara walked through the terminal, memories flooded back. At 29, she'd been the youngest project manager at her former company, responsible for a $50 million optimization of their Asia-Pacific route. After presenting her strategy to the board, the VP of Operations had patted her on the head, literally patted her on the head, and said, "That's cute, honey, but let's let the big boys handle the real decisions." 6 months later, she founded Nexus. She remembered being refused a meeting with a potential client in Dubai who had assumed she was the assistant, not the CEO. She recalled the real estate agent who had tried to steer her away from buying an office building in Manhattan's financial district, suggesting a more suitable location in a less prestigious area. There had been 1,000 small cuts over the years, but also 1,000 victories as she built Nexus into a powerhouse that could not be ignored. This incident at the gate was just one more in a long line. But this time she had something many others in her position didn't have the power to respond on an equal footing. Amara found a quiet corner in the terminal away from the crowds. She took out her phone and made a single call. "Jordan, it's me," she said when her COO answered. "I've just been denied boarding on MA-104. "Yes, Monarch Air." The station manager tore up my boarding pass and called security. Jordan Palmer had been with Amara since the early days of Nexus. At 38, he was her most trusted executive, the person who turned her strategic visions into operational realities. "What do you want me to do?" he asked simply, knowing that Amara wouldn't be calling without a plan. "Activate Contingency Protocol Delta," she said calmly. "Full implementation, and get me a private jet to Frankfurt. I have a meeting that won't be delayed." There was a pause on the other end. "Delta. Are you sure that's significant?" "I'm sure. They've made their choice. Now they'll see the consequences. I'll call you back in 10 minutes with confirmation," Jordan said. "Do you want me to notify the board?" "Not yet. Let's let things unfold naturally." And Jordan, "Make sure the European team is fully briefed on what's happening. The Autolux deal cannot be affected by this." She ended the call and sat perfectly still for a moment, her mind moving through the implications of what she'd just set in motion. Contingency protocol. Delta wasn't a mere corporate response. It was a financial neutron bomb designed to reshape the landscape. She had never used it before, hoping she would never need to. Back at the gate, Victor was feeling smug as he supervised the continuing boarding process. He'd shown everyone who was in charge, enforced the rules, protected the company from another freeloader trying to scam a first-class seat. He'd write up a detailed report for Diane Fletcher, the VP of Operations, explaining how he'd thwarted an attempt at status fraud. Perhaps this would finally get him the recognition he deserved. Sir Lucia said hesitantly, "Should I note anything specific in the system about what just happened?" "Just mark her as a no-show," Victor replied, "and note that she was uncooperative with security protocols." Michael Rodriguez stood nearby, his discomfort evident. "Victor, do you have any idea who that was?" Victor rolled his eyes. "Some entitled woman who thought the rules didn't apply to her." "That was Dr. Amara Wilson," Michael said quietly, "CEO of Nexus Global Logistics, our largest corporate account in the Chicago region." For a brief moment, Victor's confidence wavered, but he quickly recovered. "If she's really who you say she is, she should know better than to cause a scene. Besides, she didn't look like a CEO to me." "What exactly does a CEO look like, Victor?" Michael asked, a dangerous edge to his voice. Victor didn't answer, turning back to supervise the boarding process. "Get back to your post, Michael. I'll handle any fallout." As the last passengers boarded, MA-104 Victor's phone buzzed with a text from his wife. "Have you seen what's happening on Twitter? Someone posted a video from your gate." Before he could respond, his work phone rang. The caller ID showed Fletcher D. His heart skipped a beat. Diane Fletcher never called station managers directly unless something was very wrong. "This is Victor Shepard," he answered, trying to sound confident. What the hell is happening at Gate K-12? Diane's voice was ice cold. I'm getting calls from the board about a discrimination incident with a VIP passenger. Tell me this isn't as bad as it sounds. Ma'am, I was simply enforcing our new security protocols regarding verification of premium tickets. A passenger couldn't provide proof of purchase. Was this passenger Dr. Amara Wilson? Diane cut in. Victor felt a chill run down his spine. I believe that was the name, yes. Jesus Christ Shepherd. Do you have any idea what you've done? Get to your office. Now. Don't speak to anyone. Don't make any statements. Don't even breathe too loudly until I call you back. The line went dead. Victor stood frozen, the first inkling of doom creeping into his consciousness. Across the terminal, Taylor Morgan's Twitter thread was gaining traction. A travel blogger with 80,000 followers had retweeted it, adding, "This is disgraceful at Monarch Air. How is this still happening in 2023? The video had already been viewed 12,000 times and was climbing rapidly. Meanwhile, in a sleek office building in downtown Chicago, Jordan Palmer was executing Amara's instructions with military precision. He assembled the core crisis team, legal, finance, communications, and operations, and laid out the situation. Dr. Wilson has activated Contingency Protocol Delta, he announced to the stunned room. I need full implementation within the hour. Lisa Martinez Nexus's chief legal officer immediately began typing on her laptop. I'll prepare the contract suspension notices. All services or just transport. All services. Jordan confirmed. Complete separation. Tyler Washington, the CFO, was already running calculations. We're talking about $28 million in annual contracts plus the leverage impact on their alliance partnerships. This will hit them hard. What about the logistics vacuum? Asked Rachel Kim, VP of Operations. We can't just leave cargo sitting on runways. We have contingency carriers already approved as backups, Jordan replied. Activate all of them. Priority 1 is ensuring zero disruption to our clients. Monarch Air is about to become a case study in how not to treat your most valuable partners. Back at O'Hare, Amara had moved to the Admiral's Club lounge operated by American Airlines. She sat calmly checking emails when her phone rang. It's done, Jordan said. Protocol Delta is active. All contracts with Monarch are suspended effective immediately. Their system access to our logistics platform will terminate in 30 minutes. The legal notices have been dispatched to their board executive team and legal department. A private jet will be waiting for you at Chicago Executive Airport in Wheeling in 1 hour. Thank you, Jordan. Any immediate response? Not yet, but their corporate headquarters must be just getting the notices now. It won't take long. As if on cue, Amara's phone displayed an incoming call from an unknown number. I believe that's them now, she said. Keep me updated. She declined the call and returned to her email. Let them sweat, she thought. This wasn't her first negotiation. At Monarch Air's corporate headquarters in Dallas, absolute chaos had erupted. The legal department was frantically reviewing the suspension notices that had arrived simultaneously from Nexus Global Logistics. The CFO was already calculating the financial impact, his face growing paler by the minute. Diane Fletcher burst into CEO William Hayes' office without knocking. We have a Category 5 disaster unfolding, she announced, her usual composure shattered. Hayes looked up from his desk, annoyed at the interruption. At 59, he had been CEO for just under 3 years, brought in to boost the airline's sagging profits. He was known for cost-cutting and had little patience for customer service issues, as he called them. What now? Diane. Another social media complaint. Have PR handle it. This isn't a complaint, Bill. This is an extinction-level event, Diane said, placing her tablet in front of him. One of our station managers at O'Hare just discriminated against Dr. Amara Wilson, CEO of Nexus Global Logistics. Called security on her, tore up her first-class boarding pass, the whole 9 yards. It's already viral on social media, but that's the least of our problems. Hayes' expression shifted from annoyance to concern. Nexus. They're one of our biggest freight customers, aren't they? Try our single largest corporate client globally. $28 million in annual contracts. And that's just direct business. They control routing for another $150 million in affiliate freight that moves through our network. Hayes's face drained of color. Tell me this isn't as bad as it sounds. It's worse, Diane said grimly. They've suspended all contracts effective immediately. Every single one. Their legal team has already filed the paperwork. Our entire logistics system is going to grind to a halt in, she checked her watch, 22 minutes when they cut our access to their platform. Can they do that? Don't we have contractual protections? Their contracts include a corporate conduct clause with a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination against their executives. It was added 3 years ago, and we signed it because nobody thought it would ever be an issue. It gives them the right to immediate suspension of services without notice in case of a discriminatory incident. Hayes stood up, his mind racing. We need to fix this, now. Have you reached out to Wilson? She's not taking our calls, and based on what I'm hearing, she's already arranged private transport to Frankfurt. What does she want? Money. A public apology. Diane shook her head. I don't think it's that simple. From what I understand about Wilson, she builds structures, fixes broken systems. This isn't about an apology or a payout. This is about forcing fundamental change. Hayes slammed his hand on the desk. Get me Nicholas Bennett on the phone. If she won't talk to us, maybe she'll talk to the chairman of the Global Sky Alliance. Across the Atlantic, Sir Nicholas Bennett, the 63-year-old chairman of the Global Sky Alliance, was enjoying a late dinner at his London home when his secure phone line rang. Few people had this number, and fewer still would use it outside of a genuine crisis. Bennett, he answered, setting down his fork. Nick, it's Bill Hayes at Monarch. We have a situation that requires your immediate intervention. Bennett listened as Hayes outlined the crisis, his expression growing grimmer by the second. The Global Sky Alliance was a consortium of 26 airlines that shared routes, resources, and revenue. Monarch Air was a founding member. Let me be clear, Bennett said after Hayes finished. One of your managers discriminated against the CEO of the largest logistics company in North America, and now they're cutting all ties with not just Monarch, but potentially the entire alliance. That's the worst-case scenario. Yes, Hayes admitted. We need you to reach out to Wilson. She might take your call even if she won't take ours. I'll try, Bennett said, but I'm not optimistic. Amara Wilson has a reputation for being principled to the point of inflexibility when it comes to certain issues. And frankly, Bill, she has every right to be furious. As Bennett hung up, his executive assistant handed him a tablet displaying breaking news. Monarch Air stock plummets 8% on reports of major contract cancellation. The damage was already spreading. Meanwhile, Amara had arrived at Chicago Executive Airport, where a Gulfstream G650 was waiting to take her to Frankfurt. As she settled into the luxurious cabin, her phone buzzed with a text from Jordan Protocol Delta fully implemented. Monarch Air freight operations already reporting disruptions. Their stock is down 8% and falling. She nodded to herself. This wasn't about revenge. This was about consequences, clear, proportional, and unavoidable consequences for actions that would otherwise be dismissed, explained away, or buried in corporate bureaucracy. Her phone rang again, this time displaying Bennett N. She considered letting it go to voicemail, but decided against it. Nicholas Bennett was not the enemy here. Good evening, Sir Nicholas, she answered calmly. Dr. Wilson Bennett's cultured British accent came through clearly. I've just been briefed on the incident at O'Hare. First, let me say that I am personally appalled by what happened to you. It was inexcusable, unprofessional, and contrary to everything the Alliance claims to stand for. I appreciate that, Amara replied. But I suspect you're calling for more than just to offer an apology. Direct as always, Bennett said with a slight chuckle. Yes, I'm calling to understand what it would take to resolve this situation. The contractual suspensions with Monarch are already causing significant disruption, and the potential impact on the broader alliance is concerning. What happened today wasn't an isolated incident, Sir Nicholas. It was the product of a corporate culture that enables and protects certain behaviors while punishing others. My response isn't about a single manager's actions. It's about forcing recognition of a pervasive problem. I understand, Bennett said, and to his credit, he sounded sincere. What are your terms for reinstatement of services? I don't negotiate under duress, and I don't make demands in the heat of the moment, Amara said. I'll present my terms when I'm ready, not before. For now, the contracts remain suspended. Bennett sighed. May I at least tell Hayes that you're open to discussing resolution terms in the future? You may, but make it clear that any resolution will require structural changes, not just window dressing. And Sir Nicholas. The next call should come from Hayes directly, not his proxies. As she ended the call, Amara gazed out the window at the darkening sky. The jet was preparing for takeoff, the engines spooling up with a reassuring whine. She didn't take satisfaction in what was unfolding. This wasn't about personal vindication. This was about using the power she had spent decades accumulating to create change that would outlast a news cycle or a social media moment. Monarch Air's operations center in Dallas had descended into controlled chaos. Real-time alerts were flooding in from stations across their network as Nexus-controlled freight shipments suddenly showed access denied in the system. Dispatchers were frantically calling for guidance as valuable cargo sat unprocessable on tarmacs from Miami to Seattle. In the executive conference room, William Hayes was surrounded by his crisis team, legal operations, PR, and finance, all looking shell-shocked as the scale of the disaster became clear. Give me numbers, Hayes demanded, his voice tense. The CFO cleared his throat. Initial impact is $2.3 million in stranded cargo that we can't process. By tomorrow morning, that number will hit $15 million if we can't restore system access. Our stock is down 12% and still falling in after-hours trading. Conservative estimate of total financial impact if this continues for a week, $75 to $90 million. Jesus, Hayes muttered. All because one manager couldn't keep his biases in check for 5 minutes. It's more than that, Diane Fletcher interjected. This was a predictable outcome of the culture we've cultivated. The memo I sent last week about cracking down on premium cabin abuse was coded language and everyone knew it. We've been selectively enforcing rules based on how passengers look for years. We just finally did it to someone with the power to hit back. The room fell silent at this uncomfortable truth. Sir, the head of PR, spoke up hesitantly. The social media situation is escalating. The video has over 3 million views. Major news outlets are picking it up. We're being called #MonarchRacist on Twitter. Hayes rubbed his temples. Have we located Wilson? She's on a private jet to Frankfurt, Diane replied. Bennett spoke with her briefly. She's not making demands yet, but indicated she'll present terms for reinstatement of services when she's ready. What could she possibly want? A public flogging of the manager. Money. Diane shook her head. From everything I know about Wilson, this isn't about public humiliation or a payout. She builds things, companies, systems, structures. She'll want to rebuild our processes from the ground up. The legal counsel raised a hand. There's something else you should know. Our contract with Nexus isn't the only one at risk. Many of our corporate agreements include matching conduct clauses that allow other companies to suspend services if a partner is found in breach of ethics standards. We're already getting inquiries from 3 other major corporate clients asking for assurances that this isn't a pattern. Hayes's phone buzzed a text from the chairman of Monarch's board emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. Be prepared to explain how you let this happen and how you plan to fix it. At the gate at O'Hare, Victor Shepard was beginning to grasp the magnitude of his error. His phone wouldn't stop ringing colleagues, reporters, even old friends who'd seen the video online and wanted to know what the hell he'd been thinking. Lucia Hernandez was still at her post processing the final standby passengers for MA-104, which was now 30 minutes delayed due to the commotion. She was doing her best to maintain professionalism, but her hands shook slightly as she scanned boarding passes. Lucia, Victor said, approaching her station, "When you finish here, I need you to come to my office to give a statement about what happened." She looked up at him, her expression carefully neutral. "I've already filed my incident report in the system, Mr. Shepard. I documented exactly what occurred." "Yes, but I need to make sure our stories align before—" "Our stories," she interrupted, something steel-like entering her voice. "There aren't multiple stories here. There's what happened, which is that you discriminated against a global elite member based on her appearance. I've documented that accurately. I won't be changing my account." Victor's face flushed red. "Watch your tone. I'm still your supervisor. For how much longer, I wonder," Lucia replied, turning back to the waiting passengers. Michael Rodriguez approached, his expression grave. "Victor, you need to report to the administrative offices immediately. Regional VP Lawrence is on a video call waiting for you." As Victor hurried away, his career flashing before his eyes, Michael turned to Lucia. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "I just keep thinking about Dr. Wilson and how she must have felt. All her accomplishments, her status, her humanity reduced to nothing in an instant because someone decided she didn't look right for first class." "I know," Michael said quietly, "but something tells me this story isn't over yet." On the Gulf Stream flying east across the Atlantic, Amara was reviewing the final terms of the Autolux deal when Jordan called with an update. "The fallout is spreading faster than we anticipated," he reported. "Monarch's stock is down 15% now. 2 other major corporate clients have invoked their ethics clauses to suspend contracts pending investigation. The video has gone viral, over 5 million views and counting. CNN is running it in their business segment. And our operations," Amara asked, "always focused on the practical details. Seamless transition to backup carriers. We had some minor delays in Phoenix and Charlotte, but nothing significant. The contingency planning paid off." "Good. Have we heard anything official from Monarch yet?" Hayes tried to call twice in the last hour. "His office also sent a formal request for a video conference at your convenience." Amara considered this. "Let him wait until I land in Frankfurt. I want him to fully understand the scope of the problem before we discuss solutions." "Understood." The Autolux team confirmed they're aware of the situation, but it won't affect tomorrow's signing. If anything, they seem impressed by your response. After ending the call, Amara closed her eyes for a moment. The incident at the gate had triggered something deeper than professional indignation. It had connected to a lifetime of similar moments, being asked if she was in the right meeting, being mistaken for administrative staff, being questioned about her credentials, while male colleagues with identical qualifications were accepted without question. The difference now was that she had built something that couldn't be ignored. Nexus Global Logistics wasn't just a company. It was a critical piece of infrastructure that kept global commerce flowing. The power she wielded wasn't loud or flashy. It was essential, foundational, the kind of power that only becomes visible when it's suddenly withdrawn. In Dallas, the emergency board meeting of Monarch Air was reaching a crescendo of recrimination and damage control. "How could this happen?" demanded Eleanor Simmons, the longest-serving board member. "We've invested millions in diversity training and inclusion initiatives. Training means nothing if it's not reflected in our actual practices," replied Dr. James Martinez, the newest board member, and the only person of color in the room. "We've created a culture where someone like Shepard felt empowered to act on his biases because he believed the company would back him up. And historically we have." "What do you mean?" Hayes asked defensively. "I mean that we settle discrimination complaints, quietly transfer problematic employees instead of firing them, and issue weak public statements about reaffirming our commitment to diversity without actually changing anything substantial. Shepard wasn't an aberration. He was a predictable outcome of our structural priorities. The room fell uncomfortably silent as this truth settled over them. "What's done is done," said Thomas Warren, the board chairman. "The question now is how we fix it. Hayes, what's your plan?" All eyes turned to the CEO, whose confident facade had cracked considerably in the past few hours. "We've terminated Shepard effective immediately," Hayes began. "We're preparing a public apology, and we've reached out to Dr. Wilson to discuss restoration of services. We're also launching a comprehensive review of our customer service protocols." "That's it?" Dr. Martinez asked incredulously. "That's your big solution? Fire one manager, issue an apology, and promise to do better. That's exactly the window dressing I was talking about. What would you suggest?" Hayes snapped. "We need to completely rebuild our approach to these issues from the ground up. Total transformation, not surface adjustments. And based on what I know of Amara Wilson, that's exactly what she's going to demand." The board chairman sighed heavily. "Hayes, fix this. Whatever it takes. If Wilson wants structural changes, give them to her. If she wants oversight authority, give it to her. The financial stability of this airline now depends on satisfying one justifiably angry CEO. Do not fail." As the meeting adjourned, Hayes found himself alone in the conference room staring at the latest update from the operations center without access to the Nexus logistics platform. Monarch Air's freight business was effectively paralyzed, with cascading impacts beginning to affect passenger operations as well. Planes that should be carrying cargo in their holds were flying half-empty. Shipments were being rerouted to competitors. The financial bleeding was accelerating. His phone rang his executive assistant. "Sir, we've just received word that Dr. Wilson has landed in Frankfurt. Her office has agreed to a video conference in 3 hours." Hayes nodded grimly. "Set it up in my office. And Martha, cancel everything else today. This is now the only priority." The video conference was set for 4 p.m. Frankfurt time, 9 a.m. in Dallas. As Amara settled into the presidential suite at the Frankfurt Kempinski, she reviewed the latest updates from Jordan. Monarch Air's stock had stabilized, but only after losing nearly 18% of its value, roughly $800 million in market capitalization in less than 24 hours. Financial analysts were issuing concerned reports about the company's ability to weather the crisis if the Nexus contracts weren't reinstated. Amara had used the flight time to carefully craft her approach. This wasn't about humiliating Hayes or extracting vengeance. It was about creating lasting, meaningful change, the kind that would protect others who found themselves in similar situations but without her resources or leverage. At precisely 4 p.m., she connected to the video call. William Hayes appeared on screen along with Diane Fletcher and a man Amara recognized as Thomas Warren, Monarch's board chairman. Dr. Wilson Hayes began his tone carefully modulated to convey respect and contrition. "First, let me offer our deepest apologies for the inexcusable treatment you received at O'Hare. The employee in question has been terminated, and we are conducting a thorough review of the incident." Amara's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Hayes, I appreciate the sentiment, but this isn't about one employee or one incident. This is about a pattern of behavior that your corporate culture enables and, in some cases, encourages." Hayes shifted uncomfortably. "I assure you, discrimination is against everything Monarch Air stands for. Actions speak louder than mission statements," Amara interrupted calmly. "The memo your VP of Operations sent last week instructing managers to crack down on so-called status fraud was thinly veiled code, and everyone knew it. It created an environment where someone like Victor Shepard felt empowered to make assumptions based on appearances." Hayes glanced sharply at Diane, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. "How did you know about that memo? I make it my business to understand the environments my company operates in," Amara replied. "The question isn't how I knew, but why you allowed it to be distributed in the first place." Thomas Warren leaned forward. "Dr. Wilson, We acknowledge that mistakes were made at multiple levels. We're prepared to take whatever steps necessary to address your concerns and restore our business relationship. What would it take to resolve this situation? Amara's gaze was steady. I've prepared a document outlining my requirements for reinstatement of services. I'm sending it now. She pressed a key on her laptop, and seconds later, all three Monarch executives received the file. As they opened it, their expressions shifted from hopeful to stunned. This is extensive, Hayes said finally. It's necessary, Amara countered. What you're looking at is the Dignity Protocol, a comprehensive framework for transforming how Monarch Air handles customer interactions, employee training, incident response, and accountability measures. The document outlined a complete overhaul of Monarch's approach to customer service, with specific emphasis on eliminating bias in enforcement of policies. It included mandatory quarterly training for all customer-facing staff, revision of all security and verification protocols to ensure consistent application, creation of an independent review board for discrimination complaints, implementation of a second check system requiring supervisor verification for any denial of service, binding arbitration clauses for discrimination cases rather than forced confidential settlements, tying executive compensation directly to diversity and inclusion metrics. You're asking us to completely rebuild our customer service infrastructure, Diane said, sounding overwhelmed. I'm giving you the blueprint to fix what's broken, Amara corrected. The choice to implement it is yours. But understand that Nexus Global Logistics will not resume business with Monarch Air until these changes are fully adopted and operational. Not promised, not planned, implemented. Hayes looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. The financial implications of these changes would be significant. The financial implications of not making them are already proving catastrophic, Amara pointed out. Your stock has lost nearly $1 billion in value since yesterday. Your freight operations are paralyzed. Other corporate clients are invoking ethics clauses to suspend their contracts. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Hayes. It's a choice between transformation or continued decline. Thomas Warren, ever the pragmatist, nodded slowly. These terms are demanding but not unreasonable given the circumstances. I believe the board will support their implementation. Hayes looked like he wanted to argue but thought better of it. How quickly could we restore services if we agree to these terms? That depends on how quickly you can demonstrate meaningful progress, Amara replied. I'll have my team establish benchmarks and verification procedures. As you meet them, we'll gradually restore services starting with the most time-sensitive cargo routes. And Victor Shepard Hayes asked. His termination was appropriate, but it's only the beginning. I want a full review of similar incidents over the past 5 years with appropriate remedies for those affected. The call concluded with Hayes's reluctant agreement to the terms. As the screen went dark, Amara sat back in her chair feeling no particular triumph. This wasn't about winning. It was about fixing something fundamentally broken. Her phone rang Jordan calling for an update. How did it go? They'll implement the Dignity Protocol. Warren seemed to understand the necessity even if Hayes was resistant. And our services. We'll restore them incrementally as they meet the benchmarks. Start with the medical shipments and perishables. I don't want patients or food banks suffering because of corporate failures. Understood. The press is clamoring for statements. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox have all requested interviews. Decline them all, Amara said firmly. This isn't about publicity. It's about results. The only statement we release should focus on our commitment to dignity and respect in business relationships with no specific mentions of individuals or detailed accounts of the incident. As she ended the call, Amara turned her attention to the Autolux contract materials spread across the hotel desk. Tomorrow's signing would proceed as planned, unaffected by the Monarch situation. That was the difference between reaction and response. She had ensured that her core business objectives remained on track, even while addressing the discrimination she'd faced. Back in Chicago, Lucia Hernandez had been summoned to the regional office for a meeting with Lawrence Peterson, the regional VP who had flown in specifically to address the crisis. She sat nervously in the waiting area, convinced she was about to be fired for her role in the incident. When she was finally called in, she was surprised to find not just Peterson, but also Michael Rodriguez, and two people from corporate headquarters she didn't recognize. Ms. Hernandez, Peterson began. I want to thank you for your professionalism yesterday during an extremely difficult situation. Your incident report was clear, factual, and helped us understand exactly what transpired. Lucia blinked in surprise. I thought I might be in trouble, sir. Quite the opposite. Your actions represent the kind of integrity we need more of at Monarch Air, which is why, effective immediately, we're appointing you as interim gate manager for international departures while we conduct a more comprehensive review of our management structure. Michael smiled encouragingly at her shock. You earned this, Lucia. You did the right thing when it wasn't easy. There will be changes coming. Peterson continued, significant ones. Dr. Wilson has provided us with a framework for transforming how we operate, and we'll need people with your ethical clarity to help implement it. As Lucia left the office, still processing the unexpected turn of events, she passed Victor's former office. Maintenance staff were already removing his nameplate from the door. The speed of his downfall was breathtaking, less than 24 hours from smug authority to unemployed pariah. She thought about Dr. Wilson, wondering if she knew the ripple effects her stand was creating throughout the company. It wasn't just about one incident or one manager. It was about challenging a system that had allowed such behavior to flourish. The signing of the Autolux contract proceeded without a hitch the following morning. The CEO of the European tech conglomerate, Heinrich Müller, made no mention of the Monarch incident during the formal proceedings, but as he and Amara shared coffee afterward, he broached the subject. I saw what happened in Chicago, he said quietly. Your response was impressive. Many would have settled for an apology and compensation. Amara stirred her coffee thoughtfully. An apology changes nothing. Money changes nothing. Only structural transformation creates lasting impact. Muller nodded. Which is why we were so eager to partner with Nexus. You build systems that last, not quick fixes that crumble under pressure. He hesitated, then added, the dignity protocol you propose to Monarch. It's brilliant. Would you consider sharing a version of it with Autolux? We have our own challenges to address. Amara smiled. I believe we could arrange that. As she returned to her hotel to prepare for her flight home, Amara received an update from Jordan. Monarch Air had issued a public statement announcing a comprehensive transformation of their customer service practices, publicly embracing the dignity protocol without specifically naming it as such. Their stock had rebounded slightly on the news. They're moving faster than I expected, Amara commented during their call. Desperation is a powerful motivator, Jordan replied. They've already requested our verification team to review their first benchmark implementations, and Hayes has scheduled a company-wide address for tomorrow morning. Good. Begin restoring services for essential shipments as we discussed. And Jordan, I want a complete review of all our corporate partnerships. If this could happen with Monarch, it could happen elsewhere. I want the dignity protocol to become standard language in all our contracts moving forward. In Dallas, William Hayes was preparing for the most important speech of his career. The company-wide address would be broadcast to all Monarch Air employees globally, setting the tone for the transformation ahead. Diane Fletcher found him in his office reviewing his notes for the 5th time. The draft looks good, she said, having read it earlier. Honest, without being self-flagellating, forward-looking, without minimizing past failures. Hayes sighed. I still can't believe one incident could cause this much damage. It wasn't one incident, Diane corrected. It was the breaking point after countless similar incidents that we ignored or buried. Wilson just happened to have the power to force us to confront the pattern. Hayes nodded reluctantly. The board is fully behind the Dignity Protocol implementation. They see it as an opportunity to position Monarch as a leader in customer dignity standards. Ironic that it took a PR nightmare to get them there, but I'll take it, Diane said. The verification team from Nexus arrives tomorrow to assess our first implementation phase. If they approve, we get back 30% of our shipping capacity immediately. And the long-term financial impact of these changes, Diane handed him a tablet displaying financial projections. Initial investment is significant, about $42 million for system upgrades, training, and structural reorganization. But the financial models actually show positive returns by year 3. Turns out treating people with dignity and respect is good business. Hayes studied the numbers, then set the tablet aside. I've been thinking about my role in all this. The memo you sent, the one Wilson referenced, I approved it without even reading it carefully. I was so focused on cost-cutting that I didn't consider the implications of what we were actually telling our managers to do. We all failed, Diane said quietly. The question is whether we can build something better from the wreckage. The next morning, as Hayes delivered his address to the company employees around the world, watched with varying degrees of skepticism and hope. He spoke about the incident, candidly acknowledged the structural failures that had enabled it, and outlined the transformation ahead. Most importantly, he framed the Dignity Protocol not as a punishment, but as an evolution, a necessary step toward becoming a better company. In Chicago, Lucia watched the broadcast alongside Michael and dozens of other O'Hare staff. When Hayes specifically mentioned the importance of employees like her, who had the courage to document wrongdoing accurately, she felt a complex mix of pride and caution. Words were easy. The real test would be in the implementation. After the broadcast, Michael turned to her. What do you think? Is this real change or just damage control? Lucia considered the question carefully. I think it's real change forced by damage control. The motivation might not be pure, but the results could be transformative anyway. Dr. Wilson seems to have understood that perfectly. Back in her Chicago office 3 days later, Amara was reviewing the first verification reports from the Monarch implementation. They were making genuine progress faster than she had anticipated. The immediate termination of Victor Shepard had sent a clear message throughout the organization, but more importantly, the structural changes were being implemented with surprising thoroughness. They've already completed the first phase revisions to their security protocols, Jordan noted during their review meeting. And they've established the independent review board with an impressively diverse membership, including 2 civil rights attorneys and a former EEOC commissioner. Hayes is no fool, Amara observed. He knows his career and possibly the company's survival depend on getting this right. What about the second check system for service denials operational at 60% of their gates already? Full implementation expected within 2 weeks. Amara nodded, satisfied with the progress. Restore the medical and perishable shipping routes as agreed, and schedule the second verification review for next week. As Jordan left, Amara turned her attention to a different matter entirely, the expansion of the Dignity Protocol to all of Nexus's corporate partnerships. What had begun as a response to discrimination was evolving into something more significant, a new standard for business relationships that placed human dignity at the center of corporate interactions. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nicholas Bennett. Remarkable impact already. Multiple alliance members asking about adopting the Dignity Protocol voluntarily. You've started something important. Amara smiled slightly. This was how real change happened, not through momentary outrage or viral videos, but through the patient, deliberate restructuring of systems to prevent harm rather than merely punishing it after the fact. 1 month after the incident, Amara accepted an invitation to meet with William Hayes and Thomas Warren at a neutral location, a conference room at the Chicago Economic Club. It would be their first face-to-face meeting since the implementation of the Dignity Protocol began. Amara arrived precisely on time, dressed in a tailored navy suit that projected quiet authority. Hayes and Warren were already waiting, both looking slightly nervous despite their efforts to appear confident. Dr. Wilson Hayes greeted her, extending his hand. "Thank you for meeting with us in person." "Mr. Hayes." "Mr. Warren?" she replied, shaking their hands firmly. "I understand you wanted to discuss the next phase of our services restoration." Warren nodded. "Yes. Your verification team has confirmed that we've met or exceeded all the benchmarks for the first 2 phases of implementation. We're hoping to accelerate the timeline for full restoration of services." "That depends on your continued progress," Amara said, taking a seat at the conference table. "I've reviewed the reports, and while I'm impressed with your implementation speed, I'm still concerned about the sustainability of these changes." Hayes leaned forward. "What would address those concerns? I need to know this isn't just crisis management, that once the pressure is off, you won't revert to old patterns. I need guarantees that these changes will be permanent." Warren exchanged glances with Hayes. "We've already incorporated the dignity protocol requirements into our corporate bylaws." The board voted unanimously. "Corporate bylaws can be changed," Amara pointed out. "I need something more binding." Hayes looked uncomfortable. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I want the dignity protocol to be integrated into the Global Sky Alliance's founding charter, not just for Monarch Air, but as a standard for all 26 member airlines, with binding arbitration clauses and financial penalties for non-compliance." The room fell silent. What Amara was asking would transform not just one airline, but an entire global alliance representing nearly 30% of worldwide air traffic. "That's beyond my authority to approve," Hayes said finally. "I'm aware," Amara replied calmly. "Which is why I've already discussed it with Sir Nicholas Bennett. He's cautiously supportive pending approval from the Alliance Board." Warren looked stunned. "You've been negotiating with Bennett directly?" "I've been exploring possibilities," Amara corrected. "The future of our business relationship depends on structural guarantees, not personal assurances. The Alliance Charter Amendment would provide that." Hayes seemed torn between admiration and frustration. "You're leveraging this incident to transform an entire industry." "I'm using my position to create lasting change," Amara countered. "The same position your employee questioned when he decided I didn't look like someone who belonged in first class." There was no argument against this truth, and Hayes knew it. "If we secure Alliance support for the Charter Amendment," Warren asked, "would that satisfy your requirements for full restoration of services?" "Yes," Amara said. "With one additional condition. I want Lucia Hernandez, the gate agent who tried to intervene during the incident, to be named to lead the implementation team for the Dignity Protocol at O'Hare. Her insight and integrity would be valuable assets." Hayes nodded slowly. "That's actually a good suggestion. She's already been promoted to interim manager." "Then we have the outline of an agreement," Amara said, rising from her seat. "I'll expect updates on the Alliance Charter discussions within the week." As she left the meeting, Amara felt a quiet satisfaction. This had never been about punishing Monarch Air or extracting concessions. It had been about creating a template for change that could be replicated across an industry with a long history of similar problems. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jordan Autolux's implementation of Dignity Protocol proceeding ahead of schedule. 3 other major clients have requested consultation on adoption. What had begun as a response to discrimination was becoming a movement, a new standard for how corporations managed human interactions in an increasingly diverse global marketplace. 2 weeks later, the Global Sky Alliance Board convened an extraordinary session to vote on the Charter Amendment. The proposal had generated intense debate among member airlines, some of whom were resistant to what they viewed as external pressure. But the financial reality was undeniable. Monarch Air's brief separation from Nexus had cost them hundreds of millions in market value and operational disruptions. No one wanted to risk a similar outcome. Sir Nicholas Bennett skillfully guided the discussion, framing the amendment not as capitulation to pressure, but as a forward-thinking adaptation to changing consumer expectations. The dignity protocol isn't just about avoiding discrimination lawsuits, he argued. It's about creating a competitive advantage in a marketplace where consumers increasingly vote with their wallets based on corporate values. After 4 hours of debate, the amendment passed with a vote of 22-4. The Global Sky Alliance would become the first major airline consortium to adopt binding dignity standards across all member operations. When news of the vote reached Amara, she was in a meeting with her executive team discussing the upcoming quarter's logistics challenges. Jordan passed her a note with the result. She nodded once, then continued the meeting without interruption. This wasn't a moment for celebration. It was simply another step in the ongoing work of building better systems. Later that evening, alone in her office, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The incident at O'Hare had been painful, humiliating in the moment. But the response, the structured, strategic deployment of her influence to create lasting change, had transformed that momentary indignity into something powerful and enduring. Her phone rang, William Hayes calling to confirm the Alliance vote and request full restoration of services as agreed. "The implementation teams are ready," he said, sounding genuinely enthusiastic for the first time since their interactions began. "Lucia Hernandez has been officially appointed as lead implementation officer for the Chicago hub, and I wanted you to know that we're extending the dignity protocol beyond customer interactions to include our hiring and promotion practices as well." "That's good to hear," Amara replied. "I'll instruct our operations team to begin full restoration of services effective immediately." As she ended the call, Amara sent a brief message to Jordan: "Protocol complete. Full restoration authorized." With that simple directive, the last pieces of the response she had set in motion a month earlier fell into place. Monarch Air would regain its logistics capabilities, but the company, and now the entire alliance, had been fundamentally transformed in the process. The announcement of the Global Sky Alliance's adoption of the Dignity Protocol made front-page news in the business press. The Wall Street Journal ran an analysis piece titled, "How One Executive's Stand Transformed an Industry," while Bloomberg published a deep dive into the financial implications of the new standards. Monarch Air's stock had recovered most of its losses as investors responded positively to the company's transparent transformation. Industry analysts were already speculating that other airline alliances would soon follow suit, adopting similar standards to remain competitive. Victor Shepard, meanwhile, had discovered that his termination from Monarch was just the beginning of his troubles. The video of the incident had made him instantly recognizable, and his name had become synonymous with workplace discrimination. Job applications went unanswered. Former colleagues avoided him. His LinkedIn profile became a target for angry comments until he was forced to deactivate it. Sitting alone in his apartment surrounded by bills and rejection letters, Victor finally began to understand the true cost of the biases he had so casually acted upon. This wasn't just about losing a job. It was about confronting the reality that his worldview was fundamentally flawed and had caused real harm to others. The reckoning was painful, but necessary. At O'Hare, Lucia Hernandez was thriving in her new role. The implementation of the Dignity Protocol had given her a platform to address issues she'd observed for years, but had felt powerless to change. Her team had already conducted training sessions for every customer-facing employee in the Chicago hub, and the early results were promising. Customer satisfaction scores were rising, and reported incidents of discriminatory treatment had decreased dramatically. Michael Rodriguez had been promoted to Regional Operations Director with explicit responsibility for ensuring compliance with the new standards. He and Lucia often worked together, their shared experience of the Catalyst incident giving them unique insight into the changes needed. "I never thought something like this would happen in my career," Lucia confessed during one of their implementation meetings. "A complete transformation of how we operate, all because one person refused to accept being mistreated. It wasn't just any person," Michael reminded her. "It was someone with the power to force change." That's the unfortunate reality. Most people who experience what Dr. Wilson did don't have the leverage to make corporations listen. Which is why these structural changes are so important. Lucia said thoughtfully. They protect everyone, not just those with power. At Nexus headquarters, Amara had moved on to other strategic priorities. The Monarch incident, while significant, was just one of many challenges requiring her attention. The expansion of the Autolux partnership was proceeding ahead of schedule, and new opportunities in the Asia-Pacific region demanded focus. Yet the impact of the Dignity Protocol continued to expand. 3 major hotel chains had approached Nexus about adapting the framework for their operations. A tech industry consortium was exploring how to implement similar standards in their customer service centers. What had begun as a response to one incident of discrimination was evolving into a new paradigm for corporate responsibility. Jordan found Amara in her office late one evening reviewing the latest logistics forecasts for the coming quarter. "I thought you might like to see this," he said, handing her a tablet displaying an article from the Harvard Business Review titled "The Wilson Standard: How the Dignity Protocol is Reshaping Corporate Ethics." Amara skimmed the piece, which analyzed the business case for dignity-centered corporate practices using the Monarch Air transformation as its primary case study. The article concluded that companies adopting such standards were seeing measurable improvements in customer loyalty, employee retention, and brand value. "They're missing the point slightly," she commented, handing the tablet back. "This isn't just about business metrics. It's about creating environments where people are treated with respect regardless of how they look or what they wear." True, Jordan agreed, but if corporate America needs a business case to do the right thing, I'll take it. The results matter more than the motivation. Amara nodded thoughtfully. "Have we received the final verification report from Monarch this morning? They've met or exceeded all benchmarks. The transformation appears to be genuine and comprehensive." "Good. Schedule a follow-up review in 6 months. Sustainable change requires ongoing verification." As Jordan left, Amara turned her attention back to the logistics forecasts. The Monarch incident had been resolved successfully, but her work continued. There would always be more systems to build, more structures to improve, more dignity to protect. That was the nature of progress, not a destination, but a continuous journey toward better. 6 months after the incident, Monarch Air hosted a corporate symposium on dignity-centered customer experience at their headquarters in Dallas. Leaders from across the travel industry gathered to learn about the transformation that had begun with one confrontation at a boarding gate and had evolved into a movement reshaping corporate practices worldwide. William Hayes gave the opening address, speaking with a humility that would have been unimaginable before the crisis. What we initially viewed as a catastrophic PR disaster has become the most significant positive transformation in our company's history, he told the assembled executives. The Dignity Protocol hasn't just changed how we treat our customers, it's changed how we understand our purpose as a business. The symposium featured panel discussions on implementation strategies, metrics for measuring improvement, and the business case for dignity-centered practices. But the most powerful moment came during Lucia Hernandez's presentation on frontline implementation. She spoke candidly about witnessing the incident that had catalyzed the change and how it had transformed her own understanding of her responsibilities. "When I saw Dr. Wilson being treated that way, I knew it was wrong, but I felt powerless to stop it," she admitted. The Dignity Protocol has given every employee not just the permission, but the obligation to ensure that all customers are treated with respect. That shift from passive witness to active guardian of dignity has transformed our corporate culture from the ground up. At Nexus headquarters in Chicago, Amara watched the live stream of the symposium while preparing for her next meeting. The transformation at Monarch had exceeded her expectations, but more importantly, it had created a template that other organizations were now adopting voluntarily. The Wilson Standard, as it had come to be known in business circles, had spread beyond airlines to hotels, retail chains, and even healthcare systems. The Harvard Business School was developing a case study on the Monarch transformation for their executive education program. Business publications were analyzing the financial benefits of dignity-centered practices, finding that companies that adopted them were seeing significant improvements in customer retention and employee satisfaction. But for Amara, the most meaningful impact wasn't measured in corporate metrics or business school case studies. It was in the stories she heard from individuals who had been protected by the changes she had set in motion. A flight attendant from Toronto wrote to thank her for creating an environment where she could intervene when she saw a passenger being mistreated without fear of reprisal. A businessman from Lagos shared how the second check system had prevented him from being denied boarding on a flight when a gate agent had questioned the legitimacy of his business class ticket. A transgender traveler described how the new training protocols had resulted in noticeably more respectful treatment during security screenings. These individual experiences of dignity preserved and respect maintained were the true measure of the transformation's success. 1 year to the day after the incident, Amara found herself back at O'Hare once again preparing to board a flight to Frankfurt. The terminal looked much the same, but subtle differences were evident to the observant eye. More diverse staffing at premium service counters, clearer signage about passenger rights, QR codes, linking to the dignity standards that all staff were required to uphold. As she approached Gate K-12, the same gate where the confrontation had occurred, she noticed Lucia Hernandez overseeing the boarding process. Their eyes met, and Lucia gave a small, respectful nod of recognition, which Amara returned. When Amara reached the front of the premium boarding line, she handed her passport and boarding pass to the gate agent, a young black man who hadn't been working there a year ago. "Thank you, Dr. Wilson," he said professionally after scanning her documents. "It's an honor to have you flying with us today. You're all set for seat 2A. "Thank you," Amara replied with a small smile. As she walked down the jet bridge, she reflected on how something as simple as a respectful interaction, an acknowledgement of belonging without question or challenge, could carry so much significance. On the flight, the lead flight attendant recognized her immediately and offered a warm welcome as she settled into her seat. No fuss, no special treatment, beyond what any first-class passenger would receive, just simple professional courtesy. Exactly as it should be. Amara opened her tablet to review materials for her meetings in Frankfurt, the incident at this very gate a year ago already receding in her mind. She had never sought to be a corporate crusader or a public figure in the fight against discrimination. She had simply used the power she had built over decades to create change when confronted with injustice. The true victory wasn't in public recognition or industry accolades. It was in the quiet dignity now afforded to thousands of travelers who would never know her name or the role she had played in transforming their experience. Back in Dallas, Victor Shepard was beginning to rebuild his life after a year of reflection and consequences. The viral infamy had eventually faded, allowing him to find work at a small logistics company. Ironically, one that had adopted the Wilson Standard as part of its operating procedures. The required training as part of his orientation had been uncomfortable, but necessary, forcing him to confront the biases that had derailed his career and hurt others. He would never again hold a position of significant authority, but he had found something perhaps more valuable: understanding. The harsh spotlight of public judgment had illuminated parts of himself he had never been forced to examine, painful as that process had been. In a small irony that wasn't lost on him, his new role required him to occasionally coordinate with Nexus Global Logistics on shipping arrangements. He never interacted with Dr. Wilson directly, but her company's influence touched his daily work life in countless ways. The woman he had tried to humiliate had inadvertently given him a path to redemption, not through forgiveness, but through structural change that forced accountability and growth. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Global Sky Alliance in London, Sir Nicholas Bennett was hosting the annual meeting of member airline CEOs. The implementation of the Dignity Protocol across all 26 member airlines was the centerpiece of his opening address. 1 year ago, we faced a crisis that threatened the reputation and financial stability of one of our founding members, he reminded the assembled executives. Today, we stand as industry leaders in dignity-centered customer experience, with measurable improvements in customer satisfaction, employee retention, and brand value across the alliance. The presentation that followed showcased the impressive metrics: discrimination complaints down 78% across all member airlines. Customer satisfaction scores up an average of 12%, employee retention improved by 23%, and perhaps most compelling to the business-minded audience, a collective increase in market capitalization of nearly $4 billion, as investors responded positively to the alliance's leadership in corporate responsibility. What began as a crisis has become a competitive advantage, Bennett concluded. The Wilson Standard isn't just about avoiding negative outcomes. It's about creating positive differentiation in a crowded marketplace. By placing dignity at the center of our operations, we've discovered that doing the right thing is also the smart thing. After the presentation, William Hayes approached Bennett during the reception. "I never thought I'd say this, but that incident was the best thing that could have happened to Monarch Air," he admitted. "We're a better company for it, more profitable, yes, but also more purposeful." Bennett smiled slightly. "Sometimes it takes a significant shock to reveal structural weaknesses we've been ignoring. The question is whether we learn from them or simply return to business as usual once the crisis passes." "There's no going back," Hayes said with certainty. "Not just because of our commitments to Nexus, but because we've seen the benefits of the transformation. The Wilson Standard works for our customers, our employees, and our bottom line." As the executives continued their discussions, the impact of one woman's refusal to accept discrimination continued to ripple outward, touching countless lives in ways both measurable and immeasurable, a testament to the power of dignity demanded and respect required. The story of Dr. Amara Wilson and Monarch Air serves as a powerful reminder of how one moment of injustice met with strategic response rather than helpless outrage can transform entire industries. This wasn't a tale of revenge or public humiliation. It was about building something better from the ashes of a broken system, creating structures that protect dignity not just for those with power, but for everyone who might find themselves facing similar treatment. When Dr. Wilson was denied boarding that day at Gate K-12, she had a choice: accept the injustice, create a scene, or respond with calculated impact. She chose the path that would create lasting change, using her position not as a weapon, but as a tool for transformation. The result wasn't just justice for one incident, but protection against countless future incidents that will now never occur. The true power in this story lies not in the moment of confrontation, but in what followed: the quiet, determined rebuilding of systems to ensure that dignity isn't a privilege reserved for those who look the part, but a right extended to everyone, regardless of appearance, background, or circumstance. That's the kind of justice that outlasts viral videos and news cycles. That's the kind of power that truly matters. If this story resonated with you, we invite you to share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you witnessed or experienced similar treatment? How did you respond? What changes do you think are still needed in how companies approach these issues? Your voice matters in this ongoing conversation about dignity, respect, and the structures that either protect or undermine them. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories that illuminate the complexities of modern life and inspire positive change. And if you found value in this video, please share it with others who might benefit from its message. Hit that like button and notification bell so you never miss our next upload. Remember, sometimes the most important changes begin with a single story that helps us see the world and our power to transform it in a new light.